Welcome to the Macke Makerspace. Hi, and welcome to the Macke Makerspace. I'm Brother Bob Macke. We're in the middle of a project that I call the Observatory on a Church. This is a model of the Church of St. Ignatius in Rome, where in the mid-19th century, Father Angelo Secchi built an astronomical observatory on the roof. So today, we're going to start work on this facade and the roof structure, and we're finally going to get around to the observatory itself. So let's get started. The facade is very large and ornate, so I'm going to have to break it into several sections. And each section will be designed in Tinkercad and 3D printed. Here I'm designing one of the sections on the side where there are several columns and other elements. Where this design gets really complex, such as this ornament, I can simplify it a bit. At the scale of the printer, it won't make a difference. Now I'm making the inscription. Across the facade is written in Latin, St. Ignatius, founder of the Society of Jesus, Ludwig Cardinal Ludovisi, Vice-Chancellor of the Holy Roman Church, in the year of our Lord 1626. So I printed out all the pieces of the facade. There are 9 large pieces and several smaller bits. And the next step will be to attach the pieces together. To help with this, I'm going to have to implement my favorite flexible adhesive clamping system. A bit of plastic model glue will secure the pieces together. I had several issues with the camera focus on this build. Sorry about that, there's just not much to be done about it after the fact. Notice that I left openings for the doors and windows. They're going to be filled in later. That's a job for a different video. At the very peak of the facade, there's a bit of fancy ornamentation featuring a few cherubs. I simplified the design, and again, at this scale the details get lost, so it doesn't matter. And since it's symmetrical, I designed one half and then mirrored it for the other side. It just glues into the space I made for it. I think that looks pretty good, don't you? Again, sorry about the focus. So now to install the front steps. And this kind of makes a bit of a foot so I can stand it upright. There's one extra piece that wraps around the side of the church. And this ornamental scrollwork is typical of Italian Baroque architecture, so the facade wouldn't be complete without it. Across the top, there's 6 finials, and I'm going to install them now, but afterwards, you know what, I'm going to realize that this is a big mistake. You'll see what I'm talking about. Now let's install it on the front of the church. I've designed the facade to slide into place without glue, so I can remove it later for painting and for ease of access during construction. There's a small problem with these buttresses. They're supposed to extend all the way to the side, but there's a gap. And there's nothing to do about that except tear them out and replace them with new ones. That's tight. This little piece goes behind the facade near the roof. I'm cutting it out of foam core. It's got a slot in it that will be important later. A little bit of glue stick will secure it in place. There it goes. The next step will be roof assembly. Here's a last chance to look inside without the roof on. The real interior is spectacular. If you ever get to Rome, you should definitely see it. But for this model, we'll leave the interior unfinished. Nobody's going to see it anyway. The roof will be divided into many parts. Here's a quick survey of all of them, each one 3D printed. That is a lot of hours of printing right there. Now to dry fit them to make sure they all fit together properly. Where this part of the roof lies, there's supposed to be a giant fancy dome, but due to money and politics, it was never built. That's what gave Angelo Secchi the opportunity to build his observatory here. And under the roof, there's a flat ceiling that was painted by the Jesuit brother Andrea Pozzo to look like a dome. Secchi's terrestrial magnetism laboratory was right here. And here were Secchi's offices and library. This piece contains the housing for the Meridian telescope, and it gets placed directly above one of the support columns. And this tower housed the Merz refractor telescope, which Secchi used to pioneer the field of spectral classification of stars. Now the supports for the roof tiles. And this little bit will support a pole. I'll talk about that in a future video. I found plastic sheets of preformed roof tiles. They're about 1/100th scale, so that's about twice what we actually need, but that's okay for my purposes. Any smaller, they wouldn't really look like tiles anyway. And they cut very easily with an X-Acto knife, so I'll cut a bunch of strips to fit onto the frames that I printed. The next step is to glue them in place. Where the roof segments intersect, I need to cut the tiles to fit. And there's a little bit of excess sticking up. It can be trimmed to size. For the curved hallway, tiles need to be cut to match the curve. And that's awfully fiddly work, but in the end I got it. Once the tiles are in place, it can start gluing down the roof segments. It's sort of a bit of a 3D jigsaw puzzle to keep track of what needs to be above or below what. And some of these tiles need to go kind of both above and below others, and it takes a bit of persuading, but eventually they go where they need to go. The peaks of the roofs get their own 3D printed tiles.
And now to address a little problem. Remember how I said attaching these finials was a mistake? Well, I can't tell you how many times I caught them on my sleeve and just knocked the top right off. So it's best if we just remove them until the end of the project. So there are a few parts of the facade that also need roof tiles. Technically, they should be placed at a little bit of an angle, but for these bits, I think it's okay if I glue them flat. Or maybe I'm just a bit lazy. Back in part 2 of the build, I glued these buggers on. Now I'm going to replace them with the preformed tile. And a few other parts of the building will also get the tile treatment. Now for an historical problem. Unlike most of the church, which still stands today, the Merit's dome is long gone. All we have are drawings and photos, which don't all agree, particularly with regard to the aperture design. Illustrations from the time of Secchi seem to show the dome one way, and a photo taken about 1901, more than 20 years after Secchi's death, shows a different aperture. But the angle is bad and doesn't show it clearly anyway. So is the dome more like this, as the photo suggests, or more like this, as the drawings indicate? For now, I'm choosing the latter, but the dome won't be glued down, so I can change my mind later. There's another historical issue over here. I built this structure based on what is currently there, but this historical photo shows a different building and shows the bell tower exposed. So let's tear this bugger out and fix the problem. This also means replacing the bell tower. And a few more bits of roofing tiles should finish off the surrounding buildings.
So this project is nearing completion. All that's left is to paint it and to add in some of the fiddly bits, such as the telescopes inside the domes. We're going to get to that next time.
I hope you enjoyed this project. If so, please like and subscribe and click that bell so you get notified when the next video comes out. Now, this video is not sponsored by the Vatican Observatory, but for full disclosure, I should mention that I do make use of their facilities and resources. However, the materials and tools come out of my own personal budget. The purpose of the Vatican Observatory is to be a sign to the world of the compatibility of faith and science, and it could use your support. If you'd like to support the work at the Vatican Observatory, or even just learn a little bit more about it, there's a link in the description below. Thank you.
And for now, I'll see you next time.